Hi, my name is Cliff Sutter. I'm a software engineer out here in the Bay Area, and today I am going to talk about a project that I worked on earlier last year and into 2018 um, called Project Clownfish. Most of the work that I've done that's been a little more sophisticated since that has been contract, and I've had to sign NDAs to do some of that work. So unfortunately, I can't go super in depth about that. So I thought that maybe this project would be a good thing to talk about. So Project Clownfish was an Airbnb clone. Consisted of 4 microservices: bookings, searches, uh, events, and user management. Um, I was in charge of the events microservice, and the tech stack that I used for my microservice was pretty pared down. It was basically a combination of Cassandra DB, which is an open source distributed database system, Node.js, and LRU cache. So first of all, I use Node because JavaScript is a language with which I am deeply familiar, and because I think that Node offers a variety of advantages which make it pretty easy to use as a backend language, particularly if you're sort of starting out building more sophisticated projects as I was at that time. Obviously, the fact that it's pretty easy to manage asynchronous operations in Node because of the variety of tools that you have within the system, like promises, or within the language like promises, or even more recently async await. Makes it pretty easy to write readable and understandable asynchronous code, which is really useful. So that was sort of one of the main reasons that I used Node. Secondly, I used Cassandra DB, which was useful because it's an distributed database system, which means that you can add a number of nodes to your Cassandra system very easily. And you can replicate any piece of data entered into your system so that even if one node goes down, that data will still be at on other nodes within the system. So that's really useful, obviously, for sort of for fault tolerance. And I think one example that I saw that was sort of interesting about that was in a presentation on Cassandra. I think, gosh, it might have been Facebook, but some company had a number of data servers in New York City during Hurricane Sandy, and obviously they were all wiped out. That entire data center was wiped out in New York City during Hurricane Sandy, but they didn't lose any data because of the replication factor in Cassandra, which is basically that any piece of data is replicated over a variety of nodes. So because that's what's done in Cassandra, that company didn't lose any data, even though half of their data center that was containing like half of their servers went down. So that's really cool. So anyway, I used Cassandra on the back end and as my database. And when I was load testing my events microservice, and obviously, an events microservice is going to deal with some pretty heavy loads because I had to keep track of all events which took place within any of the other microservices. I found that it was significantly faster to batch events or articles, items, track, which sort of representing events into the system than to sort of individually insert each item. So significantly faster to the point where I think batching like 60 items was more than 60 times faster than putting in an individual item, which means it was actually faster to do a single batch than it would be to put in like one item into the DB, which was really interesting. So anyway, to sort of like temporarily hold items until I could batch them, I used an LRU cache. You may be familiar with an LRU cache. It's essentially just a type of data structure that evicts the least recently used item in the cache. It's a combination of a doubly linked list and a hash table. So used an LRU cache to temporarily keep track of items and then move them into the Cassandra DB when when the number of items in the LRQ cache reached a certain size and I wanted to batch them in. So was able to get the system to run out, or I was able to handle several thousand requests per second, Dockerized it, decided not to deploy it on AWS just because it's kind of expensive to use a Cassandra DB on AWS. So anyway, that was my project, and thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day.